The rain hammered against the tall windows of Windsor Castle that November morning. Inside the East Wing corridor, a young royal guard named Thomas Bennet stood frozen. Staring at the shattered pieces of porcelain scattered across the marble floor, his hands trembled. The vase he had just knocked over wasn't just any vase. It was a priceless Chinese artifact from the 18th century, a gift to Queen Victoria herself. And now it lay in dozens of sharp, gleaming fragments at his boots. Thomas had been a guard for only 6 months. This was his first posting at Windsor. He'd been so careful, so disciplined. But this morning, while adjusting his position during the early patrol, his rifle had caught the edge of the pedestal. One moment of clumsiness, 1 second of bad luck, and now his career was over. He heard footsteps echoing down the hallway. Fast, purposeful steps. His heart pounded. Someone was coming. Someone had heard the crash. Thomas swallowed hard and straightened his posture, even though every instinct told him to run. A guard never ran. A guard faced consequences with dignity. The footsteps grew louder, and then she appeared. Camilla, the queen consort, rounded the corner with 2 senior household staff members trailing behind her. Her expression was sharp, her eyes fixed on the destruction at Thomas's feet. She stopped 3 feet away from him. The silence stretched like a wire about to snap. "What?" she said slowly. "Have you done?" Thomas opened his mouth, but no words came. His throat was dry. He managed a stiff salute, his face burning with shame. "Your Majesty, do you have any idea what you've just destroyed?" Camilla's voice was ice. She gestured at the fragments. That vase was irreplaceable. It survived 2 world wars, countless royal transitions, and centuries of history. And you knocked it over like a careless child. It's one of the staff members, a stern woman named Mrs. Whitaker, stepped forward with a clipboard. "Your Majesty, I'll summon the head of security immediately." "This guardsman will need to be dismissed and dismissed," Camilla interrupted. "Mrs. Whitaker, this isn't a matter for security to decide. This is a matter for me to decide." Thomas felt his stomach drop. Dismissed. The word echoed in his mind. 6 months of rigorous training, years of dreaming about serving the crown, his family's pride, his grandfather, a guardsman himself, who had stood in this very castle decades ago. All of it gone. Camilla turned to Mrs. Whitaker. "I want a full report on my desk within the hour. And I want this guardsman removed from his post today. Do you understand?" "Yes, Your Majesty." Thomas's vision blurred. He kept his gaze forward, but inside his world was collapsing. He wanted to apologize, to beg for a second chance. But guards didn't beg. Guards accepted their fate. Camilla glanced at him one last time, her lips pressed into a thin line. Then she turned and walked away. Her heels clicking against the marble like a judge's gavel, Mrs. Whitaker remained behind, her face unreadable. "Wait here," she told Thomas. "Don't move. Don't touch anything." And then she, too, disappeared down the corridor. Thomas stood alone in the hallway, surrounded by broken pieces of history. The rain outside grew heavier. The sound filled the silence, cold and unforgiving. He didn't know how long he stood there. Minutes felt like hours. But then, a different set of footsteps approached. Lighter, softer. Thomas didn't dare turn his head. But from the corner of his eye, he saw her, Kate, the Princess of Wales, walked into the corridor. She wore a simple cream sweater and dark trousers. Her expression was calm, but her eyes held something Thomas couldn't quite name. Concern? Curiosity, maybe? Even kindness. She stopped beside the shattered vase and looked down at the pieces. Then she looked at Thomas. "Are you hurt?" she asked quietly. The question surprised him. No one had asked if he was hurt. No one had even looked at him like he was a person. "Oh, ma'am," he managed. "I'm fine." Kate crouched down, careful not to disturb the fragments. She studied them for a moment, then stood and met his gaze. "What's your name?" "Thomas Bennet, ma'am." "How long have you been stationed here, Thomas?" 6 months, ma'am." She nodded slowly. And this was an accident, wasn't a question. It was a statement. A simple truth. Thomas felt something break inside him, not shame this time, but relief. Someone believed him. Someone understood. "Yes, ma'am," he whispered. "I didn't mean to, I know," Kate said gently. She glanced down the hallway where Camilla had disappeared, then back at Thomas. "Wait here. Don't go anywhere." And before he could respond, she turned and walked in the same direction Camilla had gone. Thomas stood in the rain-soaked silence, his heart pounding for an entirely different reason now. What was the princess going to do? If you're enjoying this story, subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. This is just the beginning. Minutes passed. The castle seemed to hold its breath, and then Thomas heard voices. Distant, but clear enough to know they were arguing. One voice was calm and steady. The other was sharp and insistent. Kate and Camilla, and Thomas realized. With a mixture of hope and dread, the Princess of Wales was fighting for him. Kate found Camilla in the drawing room on the second floor. The Queen Consort stood by the window, her back rigid, arms crossed. Mrs. Whittaker hovered nearby with her clipboard, ready to take notes. "Camilla," Kate said softly as she entered. Camilla turned. Her expression shifted from irritation to mild surprise. "Catherine, I wasn't expecting you." "I saw what happened downstairs," Kate said. She closed the door behind her, keeping her tone measured. "I wanted to speak with you about the guardsman." Camilla's eyes narrowed. "There's nothing to speak about. The matter is decided. He destroyed a priceless artifact through sheer negligence. He'll be dismissed by the end of the day." "It was an accident," Kate said. "An accident caused by carelessness," Camilla countered. "That vase has been in the royal collection for over 2 centuries. It survived bombings, fires, and transfers across continents. And now it's in pieces because one young man couldn't perform his duties properly." Kate stepped closer, her voice calm but firm. "He's been a guard for 6 months. He's young. He made a mistake. But dismissing him won't restore the vase. It will only destroy a life." Camilla let out a sharp breath. "Catherine, you're being sentimental. This isn't about feelings. It's about accountability. If we let something like this go unpunished, what message does that send? That guards can be reckless without consequences?" "No," Kate said. "It sends the message that we understand people aren't perfect, that we value compassion as much as discipline." Mrs. Whittaker shifted uncomfortably, her pen hovering over the clipboard. Camilla shot her a glance. "Mrs. Whittaker, give us the room?" "Yes." "Your Majesty," the older woman slipped out quietly. Leaving the 2 women alone, the silence that followed was heavy. Camilla turned back to the window, her jaw tight. "You don't understand, Catherine. You didn't see the look on his face. He wasn't just careless. He was frozen, incapable. If he can't handle the pressure of standing guard, then he doesn't belong here." "I was terrified," Kate said. "He knows what he's done. And dismissing him won't teach him responsibility. It will crush him." Camilla's voice rose. "And keeping him here teaches what? That incompetence is tolerated." "It teaches mercy," Kate said quietly. "It teaches that we're more than just rules and tradition. We're human." Camilla spun to face her. "I am not being cruel, Catherine. I'm being practical. That vase was insured, yes, but its historical value is beyond money. And that young man's error reflects on all of us. On the integrity of this household." Kate held her ground. "Then let me take responsibility." Camilla blinked. "What?" "Let me take responsibility for what happened," Kate repeated. "I'll oversee his retraining personally. I'll ensure he understands the gravity of his mistake. But don't dismiss him. Give him a second chance." Camilla stared at her, incredulous. "You can't be serious." "I am," Kate said. "Completely serious." Camilla shook her head. "Catherine, you have enough responsibilities. You don't need to add babysitting a clumsy guardsman to your schedule." "I'm not babysitting anyone," Kate said. "I'm giving someone a chance to prove himself. Isn't that what we'd want for our own children if they made a mistake?" The mention of children made Camilla pause. Her expression softened, just slightly. But then the hardness returned. "This isn't about our children," she said. "This is about protocol. About maintaining standards." "Standards matter," Kate agreed. "But so do people." Camilla turned away again, her fingers gripping the edge of the windowsill. Outside, the rain continued to fall, streaking down the glass like tears. For a long moment, neither woman spoke. Kate could feel the tension in the air, thick and unmoving. She knew Camilla wasn't a cruel person, but she also knew Camilla valued tradition, order, and discipline above almost everything else. Convincing her to change her mind would take more than words. It would take something personal. Kate took a breath. "When I first joined this family," she said quietly, "I made mistakes too. Small ones, yes, but mistakes nonetheless. I didn't always know which fork to use. I stumbled over protocol. I said the wrong thing at the wrong time." Camilla glanced over her shoulder, listening. "People were kind to me," Kate continued. "They didn't dismiss me. They didn't humiliate me. They gave me time to learn, to grow. And because of that kindness, I'm standing here today, able to serve this family and this country." Camilla's shoulders sagged, just slightly. "That guardsman downstairs," Kate said. "He's one mistake away from losing everything he's worked for. Not because he's a bad person. Not because he's incapable. But because he had one moment of bad luck." She stepped closer. "We have the power to decide what happens next. We can end his career, or we can help him become better, stronger, more careful." Camilla was silent for a long time. Then she sighed. "You really believe he deserves a second chance?" "Got to," Kate said. Camilla turned to face her fully. Her expression was still guarded, but something had shifted. "And you'll take responsibility for him?" "I will." Camilla studied her for a moment, as if weighing the cost of mercy against the weight of tradition. Finally, she spoke. "Fine, he stays. But on one condition." "What condition?" Kate asked. "He doesn't return to his post until he's been fully retrained. And if he makes another mistake, any mistake, he's gone. No second chances. No interventions. Do you understand?" Kate nodded. "I understand." Camilla exhaled slowly, as if releasing a burden she'd been carrying. "You're too soft, Catherine. You know that, don't you?" Kate smiled faintly. "Maybe, but I'd rather be too soft than too hard." Camilla almost smiled. Almost. "Go tell him." "Before I change my mind?" Kate didn't wait. She turned and left the room, her heart pounding with relief. She walked quickly down the corridor, her footsteps light but purposeful. When she reached the east wing, Thomas was still standing exactly where she'd left him. Stiff and pale, staring at the broken vase. He looked up when he heard her approach. His eyes were red, but he hadn't cried. Guards didn't cry. Kate stopped in front of him. "Thomas Bennett." "Yes, ma'am." His voice cracked. "You're not being dismissed." For a moment, Thomas didn't move. He didn't even blink. It was as if her words hadn't reached him. Then his knees nearly buckled. "Ma'am, you'll be temporarily reassigned," Kate continued. "You'll undergo additional training, and you'll return to your post when you're ready. But you're staying." Thomas's breath hitched. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you, ma'am." "I don't thank me yet," Kate said gently. "You have work to do. And you can't make another mistake like this. Do you understand?" "Yes, ma'am." "Swear." I believe you," Kate said. And she meant it. She glanced down at the shattered vase one last time. "Accidents happen, Thomas. What matters is what we do after." And with that, she walked away, leaving the young guards standing in the hallway, no longer alone. The retraining began 2 days later. Thomas reported to a small office near the castle's security wing at dawn. His uniform was crisp, his boots polished to a mirror shine. But inside, his nerves were frayed. He still couldn't believe he'd been given a second chance. And he couldn't afford to waste it. The man waiting for him was Captain Edward Hargrove, a veteran guardsman with 30 years of service. His face was weathered, his posture perfect, and his eyes sharp enough to cut glass. "Bennett," Hargrove said, not unkindly. "Sit." Thomas sat. Hargrove folded his arms and studied the young man in front of him. "Do you know why you're here?" "Yes, sir." "I made a mistake, sir." "You made more than a mistake," Hargrove said. "You let your nerves get the better of you. You stopped thinking. And in this line of work, that's dangerous." Thomas swallowed. "Yes, sir." But, Hargrove continued, Her Royal Highness believes you can do better. And if the princess believes in you, then so do I understand. Yes, sir, good then. Let's begin. For the next 2 weeks, Thomas's life became a blur of drills, protocols, and repetition. He learned how to move through narrow spaces without disturbing anything. He practiced standing for hours without shifting. He memorized the history of every artifact in the East Wing, every painting, every statue. Hargrove was relentless. But he was also fair. And every few days, Kate would visit. She didn't announce herself. She would simply appear, walking through the training grounds or the corridors, observing quietly. She never interrupted, but her presence was a reminder, a silent reassurance you can do this. I believe in you. Thomas worked harder than he'd ever worked in his life. One morning, during a particularly grueling drill, Hargrove stopped him mid-exercise. Bennett, come here. Thomas approached, his breath heavy. Hargrove handed him a sealed envelope. This is for you. Thomas opened it carefully. Inside was a handwritten note on royal stationery. It read, Thomas, mistakes don't define us. What we do after them does. Keep going. You're doing well. Catherine. Thomas stared at the note, his throat tight. He folded it carefully and tucked it into his jacket pocket. Close to his heart, don't let her down, Hargrove said quietly. Sir, but not everyone at Windsor was as forgiving. Word of Thomas's dismissal and his sudden reprieve had spread quickly through the household staff. Some were sympathetic. Others were skeptical. And a few were outright resentful. Among them was Mrs. Whitaker. She cornered Thomas one afternoon in the staff corridor. Her expression was cold. You think you're special, don't you? Thomas straightened. No, ma'am. I don't. The princess gave you a gift, Mrs. Whitaker said. A gift most people don't get. You destroyed something priceless. And yet here you are, still wearing that uniform. I know, ma'am. And I'm grateful. Grateful isn't enough, she interrupted. You represent this household now. Every mistake you make reflects on all of us, especially on Her Royal Highness. If you fail again, you won't just lose your post. You'll humiliate her. Thomas felt the weight of her words settle on his shoulders like stones. I understand, ma'am. Mrs. Whitaker leaned in slightly, her voice dropping. Do you? Because I'm watching you, Bennett. And if I see even a hint that you're not taking this seriously, I'll make sure the Queen Consort hears about it. She walked away before Thomas could respond. He stood there, alone in the corridor, the pressure building in his chest. He'd thought the hard part was over. But now he realized the real test was just beginning. He couldn't just succeed. He had to be perfect. The following week, Kate invited Thomas to meet her in the castle gardens. It was an unseasonably warm afternoon, and the late autumn sun cast golden light over the manicured hedges and flower beds. Thomas arrived early, his heart pounding. When Kate appeared, walking down the gravel path in a simple coat and scarf, he saluted immediately. At ease, Thomas, she said with a small smile. He relaxed. Though his posture remained respectful, Kate gestured for him to walk with her. They strolled in silence for a moment, the crunch of gravel beneath their feet the only sound. How is the retraining going? She asked. Oh, ma'am. Captain Hargrove is an excellent instructor, Kate agreed. He's also not easy on his students. No, ma'am. But I'm grateful for it. Kate glanced at him. Are you sleeping? The question caught him off guard. Ma'am, you look tired, she said gently. Are you resting? Eating properly? Thomas hesitated. The truth was, he barely slept. Every night, he lay awake replaying the moment the vase shattered. Every morning, he woke up with the same fear. What if I fail again? I'm managing, ma'am, he said. Kate stopped walking. She turned to face him, her expression serious but kind. Thomas, I didn't fight for you just so you could burn yourself out. You're allowed to be human. You're allowed to rest. But, ma'am, if I rest, if I let my guard down, you'll be better for it, Kate said. Trust me. Exhaustion leads to mistakes, and I don't want you making another one because you're too tired to think clearly. Thomas looked down at his hands. I'm afraid, ma'am. Of what? Of letting you down. Kate's expression softened. You won't let me down by being imperfect, Thomas. You'll let me down if you don't take care of yourself. She paused, then added, I know Mrs. Whitaker spoke to you. I know she's putting pressure on you. Thomas's eyes widened. Ma'am, I didn't. It's all right, Kate said. She means well. She's protective of the household. But don't let her words weigh you down more than they should. You're here because I believe in you, not because you have to be perfect. Thomas felt something loosen in his chest. For the first time in days, he could breathe. Thank you, ma'am, he whispered. Kate smiled. Come on, let's walk a bit more. It's too nice a day to be inside. They walked through the gardens together, and for a little while, Thomas allowed himself to feel something other than fear. He felt hope, but back in the castle. In a private study on the second floor, Camilla sat at her desk reviewing reports. Mrs. Whitaker stood beside her, arms folded. He's still here, Mrs. Whitaker said quietly. I'm aware, Camilla replied, not looking up, Your Majesty, with respect. I believe the princess is being too lenient. That boy is a liability. Camilla set down her pen and looked up. Catherine made a promise to me. She said she would take responsibility for him, and I trust her. Mrs. Whitaker pressed her lips together. And if he fails, Camilla's gaze hardened. Then he's gone. No exceptions. Mrs. Whitaker nodded. Understood, Your Majesty. But as she left the room, she cast one last glance at the window, where the garden stretched out below. She saw Kate and Thomas walking together, talking, almost like equals, and Mrs. Whitaker frowned. Because kindness, in her experience, was often mistaken for weakness, and weakness had no place in the royal household. 3 weeks later, Thomas was ready to return to his post. The morning of his return, he arrived at Windsor an hour early. He stood in front of the mirror in the guardroom, adjusting his uniform for the 10th time. His hands still trembled slightly, but not from fear this time. From determination, Captain Hargrove entered the room, his boots clicking sharply against the floor. Bennett, sir. Thomas turned and saluted. Hargrove studied him for a moment, then nodded. You've worked hard. You've earned this. Don't waste it. I won't, sir. Good. Now get to your post. East Wing Corridor. You know where? Thomas's heart skipped. The East Wing, the exact spot where everything had gone wrong. Hargrove saw the flicker of hesitation in his eyes. Bennett, you can do this. Thomas squared his shoulders. Yes, sir. He walked through the castle corridors, his rifle at his side, his posture perfect. Staff members passed by, some nodding at him, others pretending not to notice. But Thomas kept his eyes forward. When he reached the East Wing, he stopped. The pedestal where the vase had stood was still there, but now it was empty. A small card sat on top, handwritten in elegant script, under restoration. History is worth saving. Thomas stared at the card for a long moment. Then he took his position beside the pedestal, standing tall and still. Hours passed. His legs ached. His back stiffened, but he didn't move. And then in the late afternoon, he heard footsteps. Kate appeared at the end of the corridor. She wasn't alone. William, the Prince of Wales, walked beside her. They were deep in conversation, but when Kate glanced up and saw Thomas, she paused. She said something quietly to William, who nodded. Then she walked toward Thomas. Thomas, she said warmly. Welcome back. Thank you, ma'am. His voice was steady, professional. Kate smiled. How does it feel to be here again? It feels right, ma'am. She glanced at the empty pedestal, then back at him. You've come a long way in a short time. I'm proud of you. Thomas felt his throat tighten, but he kept his composure. I couldn't have done it without you, ma'am. Kate shook her head gently. You did the work, Thomas. I just gave you the chance. William approached, hands in his pockets. You're the guardsman Kate told me about, he said. Yes, sir? Thomas saluted. William nodded approvingly. She doesn't fight for just anyone, you know. You must have made an impression. I hope to continue earning that trust, sir. Good man, William said. Then, with a glance at Kate, he added, We should let him get back to work. Kate nodded. Of course, She looked at Thomas one last time. "Keep going, Thomas. You're exactly where you're supposed to be." And with that, they walked away, leaving Thomas standing alone once more. But this time, he didn't feel alone. He felt stronger. That evening, as the sun set over Windsor and the castle's lights began to glow, Thomas remained at his post. His shift was nearly over, but he didn't mind. For the first time in weeks, he felt at peace. Then he heard a sharp voice behind him. Bennett turned his head slightly. Mrs. Whitaker stood a few feet away. Her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. "Ma'am," he acknowledged. She walked closer, inspecting him with a critical eye. "I hear you've returned to active duty?" "Yes, ma'am." "And you're confident you can handle it this time?" "Yes, ma'am." She studied him for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, her expression softened just a fraction. "You're lucky, you know. Not everyone gets a second chance, I know, ma'am." "Then don't squander it," she said. "The princess put her reputation on the line for you. Don't make her regret it." "I won't, ma'am." Mrs. Whitaker nodded curtly. "See that you don't." She turned to leave, but paused. Without looking back, she said, "For what it's worth, Bennett, you've surprised me. Keep it up." And then she was gone. Thomas exhaled slowly. He hadn't realized he'd been holding his breath. Later that night, after his shift ended, Thomas walked through the castle's quiet halls toward the guardroom. But as he passed a side corridor, he saw a familiar figure standing by a window. Camilla, she was alone, gazing out at the darkened gardens. She looked tired, almost fragile. Thomas hesitated. He should keep walking. He shouldn't disturb her, but something made him stop. "Your Majesty," he said quietly. Camilla turned, surprised. "Bennett." He saluted. "I wanted to thank you, ma'am, for giving me a second chance." Camilla's expression was guarded. "You have the princess to thank for that. Not me." "I know, ma'am. But you allowed it, and I'm grateful." Camilla was silent for a moment. Then she sighed. "I hope you understand the position you put me in. That vase was irreplaceable." "I do, ma'am. And I'm truly sorry." She studied him carefully. "Catherine believes in you. She fought for you. Don't prove her wrong." "I promise." Milla's gaze softened, just slightly. "See that you don't." Thomas saluted once more, then turned to leave. But before he could walk away, Camilla spoke again. "Bennett." He stopped. "Yes, ma'am. You're a very lucky young man. Not because you were forgiven, but because someone believed you were worth fighting for." Thomas felt a lump rise in his throat. "I know, ma'am, and I'll spend the rest of my career proving she was right." Camilla nodded. "Good." And with that, she turned back to the window. Thomas walked away, his heart full. 6 months later, Thomas stood in the same East Wing corridor. But this time, a new vase sat on the pedestal, carefully restored. Piece by painstaking piece, by the Royal Collection's best artisans. It wasn't perfect. The cracks were still visible if you looked closely. But it was whole again. Kate stopped by one afternoon to see it. Thomas was on duty, standing at attention beside it. "It's beautiful," she said, admiring the restoration. "Yes, ma'am," Thomas agreed. Kate smiled. "You know, they could have replaced it with something else. Something new. But they chose to repair it instead." Thomas understood the meaning behind her words. "Sometimes," Kate said softly, "broken things are worth saving." She glanced at him. "Wouldn't you agree?" Thomas met her gaze and smiled. "I would, ma'am. I absolutely would." Kate nodded, then continued down the corridor, and Thomas remained at his post. Standing tall, standing strong, he had been broken. But he had been saved, and now he was whole again. The story of the young guard who was almost dismissed became a quiet legend within the royal household. Some saw it as a tale of mercy. Others saw it as a lesson in second chances. But for Thomas Bennett, it was something far more personal. It was proof that even in the highest halls of tradition and protocol, there was still room for compassion, still room for grace, and still room for a young man who had stumbled to rise again because Kate had believed in him when no one else did, and that belief had changed everything.